All right, welcome everyone. Today we talk about establishing authority and embracing authenticity with our guest, Hollie Kitchens. All right, my name is Vincent Koo, and this is Success Leaves Clues. Hey, Hollie.
Hi.
So good to have you on. Hollie, I know you as the gatekeeper and like the access genie for our huge, Honey Badger Nation group. But you are also, and I've learned this over the last couple of years, an amazing brand strategist. And that's what I want to dig into today.
I am so excited. This is my favorite topic. Let's go.
Yes. So first off, how did it all come about, right? So I think it started with real estate, and tell me about where it all began.
You know what's so funny is it actually did not start with real estate. So
Hmm.
I grew up in a very small town in Oklahoma, and I grew up in low income housing. We really didn't have much at all times. But I will say this: I quickly learned as a child to like lay underneath the radar, play it safe. Because attention at the time for me, attention equaled negativity as a child
Hmm.
being bullied and things like that. So it's funny because that kind of got ingrained in my brain, like even into adulthood, is like just lay low, be behind the scenes type girl, embrace that kind of no one knows who you are. And I got into real estate in 2010 and I worked for a brokerage called the J Kinder Real Estate Team. And I what I loved about it is I got to hide behind Jay's face. I got to hide behind Jay's logo. I literally didn't have to deal with my face being on signs or billboards. That was all Jay. I just got to be a buyer's agent, again, playing it safe, laying low, below the radar, and then just kind of helping my clients. They did encourage us, though, in the office to obviously put ourselves out there because if we're closing more deals, they're going to be closing more deals for the team. So I remember just a really funny, quick story. I remember before iPhones had like cool cameras, they had purchased what's called a flip camera. I don't know if you remember those, but they were like a little like portable camera that you could go in and video things.
Hmm.
And I finally told myself, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to make a thing on YouTube. This is like 2011. So it was before you could buy like ads or promote your YouTube videos. And I take this little flip camera. I do a new construction walkthrough in a town called Elgin. And I'm pretty sure it looked like Blair Witch Project. I didn't have a tripod. Like, I'm sure it was awful. But I did this video of a walkthrough of this new construction. I uploaded on YouTube and I kind of was like hoping maybe I'll get like 50 views. That was kind of my goal. I remember I checked it like a week later and I had like 30,000 views on this one specific
Oh
YouTube
my
video.
gosh.
I know. And I'm like, from the person today, I'd be ecstatic and like over, viewing the analytics and seeing where people dropped off and where was it like that caught their attention. Instead, though, back then, I was still that little girl that was shy and scared from a small hometown. I not only deleted that YouTube video, but I deleted my entire channel because I was so weirded out at the thought that people were watching my video that I did not know who they were. So, unfortunately, real estate didn't start my journey with branding because I was so small town, closed minded, scarcity mindset. It was until 2017 and I always kind of wanted to dabble in e-commerce. So I started like a hobby online boutique where I would sell concert clothes for concert goers. So like clothes you could wear to concerts, right? And I do what any smart business person does and I hire a coach. So I can see around corners, I can collapse time, get some insider information on this journey that I'm not exactly sure about because it's e-commerce, it's a new world for me. So I talked to the coach and he asked me a very simple question, but it still resonates with me today, obviously, as I'm telling you guys it. He had asked me, he said, well, what are you doing different than Amazon or what are you doing different than Target? Both of those retailers are very well known, and you can go to either place and get a Guns N' Roses shirt for $12. Why are they going to spend three times the amount of money at your online only boutique that no one's ever heard of? And I was like, oh, that's true. Like, why would they come to me versus them? And it all come back to me because I've always had like a marketing background. It's just been something I've always been intrigued by. So I knew the importance of building a community. And I'm like, you know what? I'm what the secret weapon is. I'm like, Target doesn't have me, Amazon doesn't have Hollie Kitchens, but my boutique has Hollie Kitchens. So, long story short, I created a podcast where I would interview musicians on site, and I would interview all these international rock stars or even small community musicians. And I would interview them on my podcast, and I would include my clients or my customers. They'd have the opportunity to ask questions. They would be involved. They would say like, who should we have on next? So once I started doing that, I think that's whenever I kind of realized like I need to, if I'm going to be a business owner, I need to show up as a business owner and let my customers know who they're doing business with. Because as we all know, people do business with people, not necessarily a logo. And I think that was just kind of like the excitement of, you know what, like I'm just going to be myself. Podcasting gave me a method of really delivering my authentic voice to a community of people who loved who I was, right? So I think that that was kind of like my biggest mistake, when I started real estate is I was so like lay low. I didn't put myself out there. I didn't stand out for the next agent. I just kind of got like the leads that were coming in from the company, and that's just kind of how I was closing deals. So I think that that was kind of like the big mistake that I made. But from that, as I started doing these podcasts with people, I started getting friends reaching out to me who had businesses, real estate agents or, any other entrepreneurs. And they're like, how did you do that? Like, I want to learn how to do that. And then when I try to teach them, they're like, okay, well, I don't want to learn how to do it. I just need it done for me. So, like, when I started realizing that I can help people do what I was doing, which was hiding, like, stop hiding behind a logo, that's kind of how my whole like branding journey took off. And that's just kind of like, I guess, what got me to where I am today.
Yeah, I feel like I've been hiding behind a logo for many, many, many
Yeah.
years, and really until I got into your organization and your group, and just being in front of the right people
Uh-huh.
allowed me to go out there and realize the importance of the personal brand, right?
Yeah.
Um, so so you have this interesting tagline with establish authority, embrace authenticity, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that works not only for realtors, but uh, in any industry, right? Any job and business that you're going to do. But how do we do it? How do we get started with establishing that authority?
Well, I think first, when it comes to the establishing, first off, is embracing authenticity. It's
Hmm.
really understanding like everyone has something unique about them. And I don't know if you're like me, but like growing up, I always try to buck that. I always try to blend in. I always try to fit in. I always wanted to be, with the cool kids or whatever as a child. So I would always take me because I'm super weird. I'm awkward. I have a morbid sense of humor. Like that's just who I am. For so long I tried to fight it, and I was trying to be like this whole like, super vanilla, like I can fit into any room type person. And I remember like my young 20s, like I remember I had so many friends that weren't even friends. Like they would sit there and be talking about you as soon as you got up and walked away. And I think first off, I think it's understanding what are those so and so like weaknesses that we have and embrace them. That's really part of being your authentic part of your journey. Like for me, like I said, like I'm antisocial too. Like I'm just awkwardly social. So some people would see that as a bad thing because, especially in real estate, you got to get out there and network, you got to connect with people. But what I did in high school is I reverted back to behind a keyboard. Like I learned HTML on a MySpace. I learned how to connect with people on MySpace. I made so many friends online, but I loved it because I could close my laptop and go about my business. I didn't have to be in a
Hmm.
social awkward setting. So at the time, I thought that was a weakness. But now as an adult, I get to embrace that as a strength because all the cool kids who are out there socially engaging in person, that I'm now teaching them how to do stuff behind the keyboard because I have been doing it for so long, right? So I
So
think
so you're telling me, Holly, you're telling me there's a an order to this thing, like the first part of it is to really go out there and embrace that
yeah,
authenticity. Yeah.
100%. So I think, it's hard to really establish authority in something when you're not being your authentic self. We live in such a transparent digital age. It's so easy for someone to do a quick search and find out if you're fake or not. It's crazy. You can go in and pay somebody $50 and be on Forbes, which, let's be real, if you just started your journey in real estate or entrepreneurship, you're not going to be on a cover of Forbes. You're not fooling
Right.
anybody. So I think it's understanding that part. And that's also part of authenticity too, right? Like, that's not very authentic of you to pay to be on like a backlog blog to make you look like you've been on CBS or whatever, whatever news station. I think it's part of, people are trying to, like, it's still like kind of high school. People are still trying to be popular and fit in. But I think people lose the authentic side of themselves when they're trying so hard to keep up with the Joneses or somebody else that's having some fake visage on social media. So I think it's, once you understand that, once you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to, I'm going to make a playlist of like my favorite rock band and put it on a playlist for my people to listen to every week. Or I'm going to go to concerts and I'm going to go live, and people don't understand half the stuff that metal people sing, but they appreciate it because that's just who I am. Right. So I think once I started understanding that and showing up as that person, I started tracking so many people, not necessarily within the same taste of music, but it was just because they appreciated me being like who I am. Like, I am who I am. And I think it went from having friends who I was like, you couldn't trust them as far as you could throw them, to having a group of people who just always had my back. Excuse me. So I think that was just kind of part of it, is just embracing who you are. And also to understanding what makes you unique, and taking that and amplifying it and letting people know. Because here's the deal. If you just try to be like every other agent and you just post just sold, just listed, you're at the closing table, you look just like the next person. Why is someone going to do business with you? Again, back to the whole Target,
That's it.
Amazon.
Mhm.
Why would someone do business with you whenever they can go to this big brokerage in town? What are you doing to make yourself stand out and build community? So I think when it comes to that, like, that's kind of like the embracing the authentic part of yourself and being transparent. But then on the flip side, when it comes to establishing authority, like, to me, authority is when you walk in a room, somebody tells somebody, like, that's the podcast girl. That's so and so. Like, I shouldn't have to come in and say, oh, I'm so great because of this. To me, when you have authority, that's already that's a presence that's already known when you walk into a room. Doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I will say this, it's a crazy digital world we live in, but it does not happen overnight. I think for me, if someone was to start out, like, say you're a brand new agent, or maybe you're a seasoned agent, you never really branded yourself. For me, I always tell my clients, let's think about 3 to 5 keywords we want associated with our brand. So for me, it's like podcasting, it's real estate, it's women in business, it's social media, it's content creation. So like, I have those pool of keywords. And now the next thing is like, so what do I do with those keywords? Those are obviously, I want associated with my brand, but they're also things that I'm an expert in, right? And with the real estate, and it's not necessarily that I'm an expert in real estate, but those are majority of my clients come from. So I always want to associate my brand with real estate. So for me, it's podcasting is probably my number one keyword. I'm telling you, anytime I'm featured in media, anytime I have an interview, anytime I'm on a podcast, what are we talking about right now, right? We're talking about all this
Mhm.
stuff. I always make a point to bring up my keywords and associate myself with that. So for real estate, I mean, do you guys want to be associated with buyers, sellers, luxury, first time home buyers, investors? What are the keywords you want associated with your brand, and start showing up as that expert? It's something that you literally have to live and breathe every time. I'll tell you a really quick story. I was at a music festival like a couple of months ago, and somehow I end up getting this all access staff pass. I had no business having it, but I had it. So I had access literally to like the tour buses and everything. It was crazy. So I'm standing there and I'm like, you know what? I should really connect with some of these musicians and have them on my podcast. So I'm standing in line and I see Bobby from Saliva, who's like, it's like this 2000, alternative band. And he's the lead singer. And I'm like, I'm going to make sure I connect with him. Long story short, like, I end up talking to him. I'm like, how are you enjoying the weather? Which is so silly small talk. Again, I'm awkward. I don't know what to say
It
to people.
worked. Yeah.
It was super windy, so I kind of had that going for me. And anyways, he's like, so like, what bands are you here to see? I told him, like, yeah, actually my friends, they played last night. I had them on my podcast. So I made sure to slip that in real quick, right? Without like saying I have a podcast, but I'm gonna say I have a podcast. And he was like, oh, you have a podcast? Hey, meet me in the bus in 30 minutes and let's do an episode. And I'm like, okay, like, I've got to hurry up and like do some research and ask some questions. So it's actually a episode with substance. So that happens. He goes off to get food and I'm waiting for him. and these guys keep walking by. And one of them finally stopped and was like, "Are you lost? Are you like waiting for somebody?" Because I probably had like this confused, scared look on my face, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go interview this guy." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm waiting for Bobby from Saliva. I'm about to do a podcast episode with him." Again, making sure I'm connecting myself with this, right? So, goes on. I just kind of noticed one of the badge said production. And I'm like, "Oh, are you from here?" And they're like, "No, well, I'm from LA." And I'm like, "Oh, that's embarrassing because, somebody from Oklahoma and somebody from LA is not the same." But come to find out, after I did the episode, I go in, the guy who I thought was from Oklahoma ends up being the guitarist for Candlebox, who's the headliner that night. And I am like, "Oh my gosh, I am so embarrassed." I'm sitting there thinking that this guy who's in the headlining band was like somebody who was like working the show. Like I thought he was an employee or like a, what I mean, like working it. So embarrassing. But anyways, I'm saying all this, fast forwarding to the end of the night. After the show, I'm about to head home. I'm coming down the stairs and I hear someone say, "Oh, there's the podcast girl." And turns out that guy was the
Just
drummer
like that.
just like
Mm.
that. That guy ends up being the drummer for Puddle of Mud. I end the night by sipping tequila with a candle box, puddle of mud, and just chatting and having a good time with everyone afterwards. That's the power of, being super intentional and building that authority. Because if those guys would have walked by and I just were like, "Oh no, I'm fine," they would have never said, "Oh, there's the podcast girl." They never would have associated me. They would have just been like, "Okay, that's the girl that was just looked lost and confused."
That's
But
an incredible story, but does that happen that fast in say our business of real estate,
You know,
right?
it possibly can. I don't see why it wouldn't because again, it's being super intentional. It doesn't have to be international
Mm.
rock stars that you guys interview on your podcast. It could be your mayor, it could be a local builder, it could be a mega team that you're trying to have come over for like you're recruiting them on your team or something like that. Does not have to be an international. The same thing just copies and pastes into any an industry, in my opinion. And I think once you really start doing that and you start owning it, you start having you start having that authority with it. So, too, some other ways I can just talk about briefly that I've established authority, and these are all free ways because, again, I'm a super resourceful person. The way I grew up, I've just learned that, like, hey, you just figure it out and go. But up until that point, right? Let's just say I'm not a podcaster, right? How do I establish authority? You can get featured in media. So go to Haro, which is help a reporter out. Go get featured in media. Pitch yourself to experts that are looking for everyone to chime in, or not everyone, but experts to chime in. Go in and pitch yourself there. Get featured in media that way. You can go in and you can do podcasting just like we're doing right now. I mean, people are going to look at you differently, right, Vincent? Like you're a podcaster. You're not just some random guy who's just decided to go live on Facebook. You actually have a highly produced show. So you have podcasting. You can even do just a live show and co-host with somebody. Me and Nick Krim, we had like I think it was like content and branding and real estate. We had a little live show we used to do weekly,
It
right?
was Holly and Creme, I think
Holly
it
and Krim,
was,
the Holly
right,
and
or
Krim.
something like that.
Yeah, the Holly and Krim show. Like we had that. What did it cost? It cost $0. It cost our time and it cost our energy and our effort. So there's another way you can go through and just literally start putting out content. Every social media post you put out should associate back to your 3 to 5 keywords, right? You keep doing that over and over and over. And you want people to finish your sentences whenever it comes to what you're about to say next. That's how you establish authority. It's like a muscle, right? We don't go to the gym one time and expect to walk out with a six pack. No, we go to the gym, and then if we're lucky, if we're consistent enough over 4 weeks, we start seeing a little bit of a improvement, right? So that's when it comes to building that authority. You've always got to be associating yourself with those keywords, and most importantly, got to show up as that person, right? I can't sit there and say, "Oh yeah, I'm a podcaster," but I don't put any podcast out. Like that's weird, right? I can't sit there and say, "Oh yeah, I love branding," but then I'm never on brand. You always got to be on brand. You've always got to be associating yourself. You've always got to be super intentional with every interaction that you have. Over time, that's authority will build for sure.
So important, and we're out there, we all own and operate our own real estate company,
Mhm.
and there needs to be focus on our own personal brand, and what you said is so important. Just have a few of those keywords that you just keep coming back to,
Yep.
and that repetition, that consistency is gonna help you go out there and build that brand, right?
100%. And I
All
think too,
right.
when starting out, I think people just got to get crystal clear who's your dream client. Build your brand around that because what you'll do is you'll end up working with people you love working with and not people that you have to work with.
Very important. Very important. One more tip, Holly. Leave these guys with something that they could take, something that they could use in their business, please.
Perfect. So, one tip that I always start with my clients is this: you guys make sure all your social media handles are consistent and are all the same. So, for an example, if you guys are inviting people over to a birthday party, how many addresses do you send people who are attending? You send them one, right? Like you send the address to the place.
Hmm.
But I see a lot of people, especially people who are in real estate, you guys have so many different handles. So let me give you an example. Like, say on Instagram, my handle on Instagram might be underscore Hollie.kitchens 2005. But then you go on Facebook and it's HKitch 1988. And then you go over to LinkedIn and it's like Herbalife. I'm just trying to throw something random out here. Like Herbalife Girl 211 or something. I don't know. Completely different brands, completely different addresses, people are confused. I would say one tip from everyone listening in, go in and make sure every single one of your social media handles are consistent so that your branding is on point, you're cohesive across all platforms, and people don't have to question if it's you or not. Also, too, if we're going to be professional, let's make sure our headshots are like the same, if not at least similar. The worst thing you want to do is like have somebody go to your profile and then they start guessing, like, is this that person or not? Because they look completely different on Facebook than they do on Instagram. I think when it comes to having a business and really monetizing social media, we've got to really treat it like a business, not necessarily have to sell all the time because that's like the opposite. But we really need to show up as the expert that's stated in the bio. Make sure everything's consistent, make sure everything's cohesive across all platforms, and make it easy for people to find you where you're at. Because at the end of the day, fortunately, you guys, there's someone less qualified than you that are getting your clients because they're showing up on a consistent basis and you're just not. So let's make sure have a cohesive brand across all platforms and show up so our people know where to find us and how to find us.
That's it. I'm going back and I'm going to do a social media branding audit. All right.
Yes,
So
100%. And one quick thing too, you guys, as you guys are changing your handles, make sure you go back to your platforms like KV Core, update your URLs because once you change your handle, you will have dead links on like Instagram. So say for instance, I changed my handle on Instagram from Hollie.kitchens to Hollie Kitchens. That link that's on KV Core is going to be broken. So that's another thing to add in. It's a little bit of homework, you guys, but it makes so much for a cleaner, concise, cohesive brand online.
perfect. I'm gonna go and digest all this stuff, replay it, and relearn it again. Holly, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and sharing all of your clues to our listeners. All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time with me.
All right. Take care, Holly. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.